Assalamu alaikum students. My name is Ms. Tabia and I'm your computer teacher. Today I'm going to teach you about new unit, that is unit number 5 from your book. Name is Multimedia Make a Podcast. In this lecture we will learn that how we can make a podcast by using multimedia mediums. First of all, we will learn that what is in multimedia and what are the examples of it. Multimedia is a system of relaying information or entertainment that includes many different forms of communication. You might use multimedia to give a presentation at a school. Multimedia might include video, audio clips, and still photographs. There are 5 types of multimedia, which are the basic elements of multimedia. Number 1 is text, number 2 images, number 3 audio, number 4 video, and number 5 is animation. For example, text in effects, photographic images, geographic information system, maps, voice commands, audio messages, music graphics, moving graphic animation, games, full motion stored in live videos, holographic images, etc. So within this so these are the things that we are going to cover within this lecture. Within this chapter actually. Number one, what is podcast? We will learn that what is podcast. Then we will learn about the outline, how to make an outline of a podcast. We'll define streaming, then how we can write the script of a podcast and why it is important, and about some DAW softwares, means digital audio softwares. Okay, so let's learn that what we'll learn about multimedia in this chapter. We'll learn how to make plan a podcast, what is an outline and a script, editing and improving digital audio recordings using DAW softwares, how to use feedback to improve your work. Now, number one is what is podcast? A podcast are similar to radios which you hear at your home. It is a programs in form, but they exist as audio files that can be played at a listener's end or convenience, anytime and anywhere. In simple terms, a podcast is a digital medium consisting of audio or video episodes that relate to a specific theme. The host of a podcast are referred to as a podcasters. While many forms of media have barriers to entry, a podcast is simple to create. It is a sound recording similar to a radio program. A podcast is shared over the World Wide Web (WWW) through the help of internet. Podcasts are usually made as a series of episodes. They can be published daily, weekly, or monthly. You can download a podcast file to your device it or stream it from a podcast hosting service. Now, what is streaming? Streaming media refers to multimedia for playback using an offline or online media player that is delivered through a network. Streaming is the continuous transmission of audio or video files from a server to a client. In simpler terms, streaming is what happens when consumers watch TV or listen to podcasts or internet on internet connected devices. Anyone can record and share podcasts. You just need the access to recording equipment and the internet. In this unit, you will plan and record a podcast. You will use digital recording hardware and software to make your podcast. This is a small survey about podcasting across the world. The number of people who listen to podcasts is increasing very quickly. Podcasts are particularly popular in Asia. A survey showed that 58% of people in South Korea listen to at least one podcast episode in 1 month in 2018. Many radio stations now make their programs available as podcasts. Podcast listeners are often younger than traditional radio audiences. This means that the number of podcasts and listeners will probably keep growing in the future. Now, what are the pilot episodes? In this unit, you will make a pilot episode for a podcast. Media companies make pilot episodes so they can test an idea with their audience. Discuss the ideas for a podcast episode that you can make individually. For example, things that you do in your school, like your favorite lesson, school trips or school club activities, things that you do at your home, like your hobbies, holidays, how do you spend your holidays, or sport activities. Okay, you have to choose an idea for your own podcast pilot episode and then you have to write it down. But basically, what the pilot episode is, a television pilot is an independent episode created to evaluate a series' potential for success. The term pilot signifies that this episode serves as the guiding force for elements such as tone, primary characters, and over overarching narrative. Means that the pilot episodes are the those are the introductory episodes. In short, means these are the episodes which will tell the owners that will it go up or not, will it be watchable or not, are people liking it or not. So checking out these narratives and checking out these potential of the success of the those further episodes, they make a pilot episode. Like this is a cartoon. Amanda in the future, they also made the pilot episode of this to check whether the viewers are watching it or not. So the podcasters also do this. Podcasters make a pilot episode for their podcast in which they just tell their theme, just show themselves, and just check out the views, that how many views are coming on it. So they can carry this on or not, or they'll stop it there. Okay. Now, things you need to make a podcast. You need a high quality camera and high quality audio equipment like mic. This is a camera which has a connected mic, but we have the small cameras also. Now, what is digital audio editor? DAW. We will, first of all, let me tell you a small survey that a recent estimate suggests that there are over 7,50,000 podcasts in the world. Together they have 30 million episodes. That's a lot of listening that you can listen on internet. Podcasts often have similar content to radio programs, but you listen to them in different way. Compare podcasts and traditional radio programs. If we just compare it, then the podcasts have different themes, podcasts have some music, but the radio doesn't have that. Okay? Now, let's learn about the digital audio uh, editors, means DAW, which we are going to use in our podcast. How do we make a podcast? Our digital audio workstation DAW is a software application used to record, edit, and produce audio. Think of a DAW as a digital representation of a physical recording studio, where you can produce audio for a wide variety of mediums, including film, gaming, podcasting, music, UX means user interface, and more. This is somehow it looks like. In this editor, we can edit, we can record, we can produce any type of audio. Even we can edit the videos as well. They can be used while making films, while making music, while making games, while making podcasting, while making user interfaces, and much more multimedia options we have. Okay, so we will be learning some digital audio editors which are famous in this chapter. Okay. Now we are going to start our new unit from chapter number 5, that is unit 5.1, planning a podcast. In this lesson, we will learn that how to plan a podcast and how to write a podcast outline and script. We have already learned that what is a podcast. Our podcasters use an application that called an audio editor or digital audio workstation, that is DAW, to make the recordings. Like a broadcast radio program, a podcast can have speech and music. Using audio editing software allows you to record the speech and music separately and then edit and combine them to create your podcast. Podcasts are shared using a hosting service that specializes in streaming and audio. So let's start learning that how we can make and share a podcast. We have already learned that we can use several DAW softwares, which are digital audio workstation softwares, to make and share a podcast online or offline. We have so many workstations where we can edit, we can record the podcast, we can edit it, we can trim it, we can add the music, we can add whatever we want in our podcast. If either it can be a video, it can be a clip, it can be a short track, it can be a music, or anything, with the help of DAW softwares, that is digital audio workstations. How to plan a podcast. Firstly, there should be a aim. You have already thought of some ideas for a podcast, obviously. Now you need to turn your ideas into a plan. There are three things you can think about to help your plan. Number one is your aim. Number two is your objective. Number three is the constraints. Talking about the aim is the main purpose of the podcast. This is the purpose of your podcast. Ask yourself that what do you want the listeners to know or understand after listening to your podcast? How do you want them to feel after they have heard your podcast? Your target, your aim should be achievable when you have a proper criteria that what you want your listeners to listen from you, what type of data you want to integrate in their minds, what type of information we want to share with them. Either it is informative, it is uninformative, it is prank, it is whatever type of podcast it is. Okay, now coming to the objectives. What things do you need to tell your listeners in your podcast so that you achieve your aim? You have to write down or jot down it in a notebook first, that what data or what things or what type of communication are you going to have within a podcast. Okay, what type of things you are going to cover in the podcast, this should be your main objective. First you have set the aim, the main purpose of the podcast, then now you have set the objective. Now coming to the constraints, that is the most important, that how long do you want your podcast to be, the how many minutes. Setting a time limit will help you focus on the content that is most important. Okay, how that obviously there must be certain time limit of your total podcast, in which you are going to set your starting notes, ending notes, and the main objective of your podcast. Okay, so these things will be discussed in the constraints. Now, choosing the content. Before that, when you make a plan, constraints are very important because they are things that cannot be changed. Your aims and objectives often need to change so that you can achieve them despite your constraints. Start by writing down your aim and creating your podcast. It should look like this, that for example, I'm going to create a dash minute podcast to tell my audience about dash dash dash. Okay, so in this example, you are going to set the objective, your aim, and the constraint of your podcast. Now, how do we choose the content? Think about the best way to present the content in your podcast to attract your audience. When we talk about attracting the audience, we have to look for these three things. Number one is presentation style, number two is location, and number three is mood. These three things are the most important part to attract any audience. If we talk about the presentation style first, the presentation style can be anything, like you can stand outside, you can give it a solo presentation or co-hosting or interview. If we talk about the location, you can stand outside and record a podcast, or you are sitting in a studio and or any personal location where you want to record it. And if you talk about the mood, it is like you are going to do the formal discussion or the informal discussion, or is it an informative or entertaining person whom you are talking to. Okay, so let's discuss this in detail. If we talk about the presentation style, we have three types of presentation styles. Number one is solo presentation, number two is co-hosting, and number three is interview. If we talk about the solo presentation, Irfan Junejo has started his solo presentation at the outdoor locations. If you have looked his podcast, he has started a new distinction where he is standing outside and he is doing the podcast related to the food or any other item or any other theme. Okay, his aim is to provide people a solo presentation on the food, on the street food, or whatever he is going to show you. Okay, that is known as unplugged. Now, co-hosting. Co-hosting is like what? If we talk about the two of the podcasters are hosting at the same place. These two are the famous podcasters of Pakistan, and they are sitting on a same place, same location, and they are presenting their data individually, but sharing their ideas with each other on a same topic, on a same content, creating a same content is known as co-hosting. Now, coming to the interview. The interview is the one that is formal. It is from some informative person, it is from entertainment related person. Interviews are based on questions. It is not actually a basic discussion on any topic. Interviews are के लिए आपको ज़्यादा काम करना पड़ता है. You have to write down the aim, you have to extend your time period for the interviews, because obviously it will take time to interview any person. Okay, so these are the three presentation styles used widely in Pakistan nowadays and all over the world. Okay. Now, if we talk about the location, there are two types of location: in the studio and on location. I've already given you an example of on location, that Irfan Junejo has started his own initiative, that he just goes outside and sets his mic over there and starts the podcasting over there. But he is obviously using a very good quality mic or very good quality camera to uh, uh, just express his feelings and provide you the proper information, ताकि इधर उधर की noises भी ना आए. In the studio, that's an example of a co-hosting one. These two are the popular YouTubers of YouTube, ठीक है, community, and they are just co-hosting in their own studio, and just sharing their ideas with each other on the same aim, on the same constraint. Okay. Now, talking about the mood. There are two types of mood. Number one is formal and informative. Number two is informal or entertaining. Formal and informative is the one when you talk to some person who is an influencer. For example, कोई भी influencer हो सकते हैं. He can be a religious influencer, he can be a motivational speaker, he can be a teacher, the one who influences in the society. For example, over here, Nadir Ali has made a podcast with son of Amjad Sabri and Junaid Jamshed. So these are the influencers. Obviously, it can't be funny. Okay, so this is a formal and informative mood. And if we talk about the entertainment industry, then there are the podcasts which are informal and entertaining. Obviously, they are scripted usually because they want to entertain you people. Okay, this is not a type of an interview. They are just going to make some funny jokes so that you people get entertained. So this is an example of a informal or entertaining mood, and this one is an example of a formal and informative mood. Now, how to make an outline plan. Acha, informal or entertaining mood, you can you use less formal languages in that and aim to make your audience feel good, smile, or laugh. Now, how to make an outline plan. Your podcast should have a structure that is known as an outline. An outline is a roadmap to your podcast. You need to carefully plan the order of the different parts of the podcast. In media production, the parts of a show are sometimes called segments. When we break those parts in different topics, they are known as segments in media. Okay, you can use an outline to help you structure your podcast. An outline gives the order of the segments and briefly says that what the different segments will include. Some common segments are: number one is introduction. Whenever you open any podcast, you have noticed, hello, hi, this is he, she, or this is me, and just working on this, and we are going to discuss this. This is the introductory. You can say the notes over there. Okay, it's hardly of 1 minute, not more than that. Then we have a jingle or a sting. In the introduction, we are explaining who you are and what the podcast is all about. In the jingle, that is also known as a sting. It's a short piece of music will help people recognize and remember your podcast. You might have noticed whenever you open Coco Melon, there is a some sound like ten ten ten, and wherever it would be played, you will be noticing that it's a Coco Melon jingle. Okay, so ये जो जिंगल्स होती हैं ये आपके पॉडकास्ट का एक पार्ट बन जाती हैं, इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट बन जाती है कि वो आप कहीं पे भी सुनते हो, देन यू जस्ट रिकग्नाइज, डायरेक्टली रिकग्नाइज, ये तो मैंने वहाँ पे सुना था. दैट इज वाई इट इज एन इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट of your outline plan. Now the third thing is topic segment. Use one or more segments to cover the topic, the subject of your podcast. Each segment can have a different type of content, such as an interview or a solo presentation. Let's suppose we are talking about some paranormal activities. We have made some topics on it. Okay. So this is how we go for the topic segment. Means we are going to break the topics in small segments. Okay. Now the next thing is outro. Outro means to give a short summary of the topic segments and a conclusion. Means you are going to conclude your work by giving your short summary, on the in your under your podcast. Okay, that thing is known as outro. Then we have closing remarks. Closing remarks are the thanks to the audience for listening, encouraging them or to listen to the next episode. You can encourage them to listen to the next episode. Let's please हमसे जुड़े रहिएगा. Please keep sharing the things with us. We are going to do the work. Okay, so our next segment would be this. Our next podcast is about this. You are going to tell these things so that the person will automatically get attracted to your work. So these are the closing remarks of your podcast. Now, here is an example of a podcast outline. Podcast title, सबसे पहले ठीक है, that is the school sports podcast. Then we have a length, okay, the constraint, that is 5 minutes. Now we have broken it into different segments. Number one is introduction, then jingle, then topic number one which we are going to discuss is interview. What content would be discussed in introduction? Greet the listeners, say my name, say that the podcast is about sports at the school, say that this episode will be an interview with the captain of the school football soccer team, and it would take a lot how much time? 30 to 60 seconds maximum. Okay, then we have a jingle of 10 seconds in it. Play the school sports jingle, find the jingle out after 7 seconds. Okay. Topic number one would be the interview. Introduce and welcome the soccer captain and how successful the school team is. It would take around 3 minutes. So making this outline stage is a good time to think about the audience. For example, are they more likely to understand the word soccer or football? Okay, so football and soccer are both are the same game, but by making this podcast outline, you will be setting on a target that how much time you are going to consume for the audience, okay, and how much audience are going to attract to yourself. Okay. Now, writing down a script. Most podcasts sound informal and natural. It takes a lot of practice to sound natural and relaxed while you are trying to remember everything in your outline plan. Most podcasters use a script for at least a part of their podcast. Your script includes some of or all of the exact words you want to say in a segment. When you write a script, remember to write like you speak, use the short sentences, and avoid jargon. A script is a detailed form of an outline. A script is actually what as it is are you going to say in your podcast. ठीक है? Usually podcasts are not scripted, they are informal and you can say whatever you want. But जब भी हम formal या फिर ऐसे mood में जो है वो करते हैं, interview लेते हैं, then we need a script, a proper script, so that we don't make any mistake over there. Write like you speak means that use everyday words you use sound natural and relaxed. Use the short sentences. This will make your content easier to understand. And avoid jargon. Jargons are the specialist words and abbreviations. Your listeners might not know very much about your subject. Okay? Those words which you use in your daily life and are not attracted towards the audience of every type or the targeted audience is known as jargon words. Okay? Now, it's an example of a script over here. Hi, my name is Melissa, and I'm your host for this week's School Sports Podcast, where you can find out everything about the sports clubs in our school. This week, we'll be talking about the school soccer team or a football team. I'll be asking the team captain, Saida, how you can join the team. So, this is a script that was in outline, but now mentioning the script, now he or she is going to interview by reading the script as it is. There is no chance to change the script at a time. Okay. Now, music. Music is also an important part of a podcast. In your outline plan, write down the ideas about the type of music you want to include, what genre of music you want to add in it, where do you want to use music in your podcast, what kind of mood are you trying to create. This will help you search for music clips later. For example, if we are making a paranormal activities podcast, we are going to add some horror music in it. There are several music genres which will be added according to the podcast aim or podcast content. Okay. So here we'll end our lecture 5.1. Inshallah, in the next class, we will learn how the digital audio recording works. Okay. So till then, take care a lot. Allah Hafiz. Hope you people have understand it. Thank you so much.